All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Be on the Ballot. So for this video, we're going to be taking a look at the state of Alabama. I thought it'd be cool in the aftermath of the 2024 election to kind of take a look at what these individual states are doing, what they might tell us sort of about trends and how certain things are moving, perhaps at a federal level, but also just at a state level. Because I think there's a lot of nuances even in the states where we know they're pretty deep red or pretty deep blue. There's still a lot that is interesting and can be learned. So today we're going to be taking a look at Alabama, which of course Trump won this past election by 31 points. It's not surprising to anyone. Obviously, that deep south is a big Republican area in Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, of course, also fitting in that mix. And you see the bigger population centers like Montgomery and Birmingham are obviously the ones that go more blue. But relative to other big city areas in different states, they're far more conservative. Trump coming within 11 points in Jefferson County, that Birmingham area. Not doing as well in Montgomery, leading that by over 30, but there's more votes in that Birmingham area than there are in Montgomery. So we know Alabama is a deep red state. But I think there are some interesting things to be derived out of here, and that comes mainly in the House map, actually. So we know that Alabama is going to stay red for some time at the presidential level, but currently the House map for Alabama, or at least what it was this past election, was 5 seats to Republicans, 2 seats to Democrats. And this was a new seat in District 2. There had been a lot of redrawing of the lines of the districts in Alabama, so much so that there was actually a lawsuit filed on behalf of the Democrats in Alabama that basically said that the lines were being ridiculously and deliberately drawn so that only one district included the major majority black areas. So obviously African Americans are a big Democratic voting bloc, and sort of to get around that, what Republicans in the state were doing was drawing the district lines so that all of the major African American areas in Alabama, where they comprise the majority of the town or part of the city, whatever the case may be, that those areas, no matter how far apart, were being included in the same district. And so the judge ruled in favor of the Democrats, basically saying that a district needed to be created that would open it up to the black population centers being evenly distributed, or so they couldn't all be just included in one district. And so you had the creation of, when the lines were redrawn, these two districts here, District 2 and just District 7, were drawn to look like this. Those are the blue ones that you see here. And what Democrats thought was that in doing that, this second district would become a safe blue district. And in the South, there is a lot of polarization. So on my channel, I define safe states or safe counties and districts as being 12 points or more. One of the parties winning by 12 points or more. Likely state or district is 7 to 12 points. A lean state or district is 3 to 5 points, and a tilt is under, or 3 to 7 points, and a tilt is under 3 points. And so we see a lot of division in the South, polarized division in the South to begin with. Like Alabama's neighbor in Mississippi looks like this. All of the House districts are more than 12 points in favor of one of the parties. that's actually true even for Georgia, which I'm trying to remember off the top of my head exactly what it looked like, but it's something along the lines of this. It looks something like this, right? So where you have safe districts in every single district in Georgia, right? There's no room for movement at all, certainly not any swing districts, but even just likely or lean, it's all just safe. And that's a common trend that we see in the South. It's the same with South Carolina. But what's interesting about Alabama is even though this second district, Democrats thought would again continue this trend of just being a safe blue district, if we actually look at the results in the House for that election, in this past election, 2024, what we see is that figures won it by 9 points. So that's a likely margin, obviously still heavily favoring Democrats if you're winning by 9 percentage points, a little over 9. But it's not the safe district that Democrats were perhaps hoping for. And what this tells us is not necessarily that this is going to be some sort of swing district in the next few election cycles. I don't think that it is. What I do think, though, is that it indicates sort of that shift in coalition that we saw take place in the 2024 election for Trump, where you saw improvements with African Americans, but more specifically African American men, young African American men. And so a lot of these deeper blue parts of Alabama, the Montgomery area and the Birmingham area, have big African American populations. And so going from what was expected to be a safe margin to a likely margin, or that being the result of District 2, indicates that perhaps those gains that Trump had made with African Americans was translating down ballot, and you saw more African Americans voting Republican down the ticket. And this is going to be a problem for Democrats going into future elections, not for Alabama. Alabama's out of question for them in the near future, regardless. They, doing a lot of work there for Democrats really isn't worth their time. But if it's enough to swing a district from a 12 or over 12 point, what was supposed to be an over 12-point victory for Democrats, to a 9-point victory in a district like that, well, if you see that same trend, even a 3% shift in some of these swing states like a Michigan or Pennsylvania, or even looking at a place like Virginia, where you see areas of high concentrated Black populations, you may see them either solidifying red, which I believe the Rust Belt will do. It seems like working class populations overall are moving towards the right. So I think that the Rust Belt will be solidified, and Republicans will continue to grow stronger there, and they'll actually become lean states as opposed to tilt states. But that's a conversation for a different video. But you see, if even in just these small improvements of 3% in certain districts, 3-4%, as a result of those improvements with different demographics and building that coalition, that could provide some warning signs for Democrats who really only in 2024 improved with affluent white people. And so it could be an indication of a trend. Now, Shamari figures, I think, the relatively popular candidate. I think going into the next election as the incumbent, he'll have a better even better performance. Like I think the district is gonna hold blue for some time, and that maybe even in the midterm cycle, just because of the way midterms usually go, I think he could improve his margin of victory potentially to 12 points. I'm not sure. I think it also comes down to who Republicans choose to run against him. Caroline Dobson wasn't a bad candidate per se, but especially when you're dealing with minority at the national scale, minority demographics, they tend to vote more, not strictly, but they're more likely to vote on things like identity politics. So if they are African American and the candidate is African American, that does potentially influence which way they'll vote. And obviously, Caroline Dobson is a white lady. Shamari Figures is a black guy. But I think if Republicans had an African American candidate, like a young, exciting African American candidate to run in a district like District 2, you'd see significant competition for that district. And whether it'd be enough to flip, I'm not sure. A lot of things would have to be going right. I think Republicans would have to be extremely popular at the national level, and they would have to be a red wave kind of year, which doesn't seem likely since 2024 was in and of itself kind of a red wave year. To see that in the midterms, there's not a lot of precedent for that. So I certainly think in 2026, we're not going to see a ton of movement in this district towards the right. But if it stays under 12 points, if it stays in the likely margin, I think that's a promising sign that the coalition that Republicans are building, or that the populations that they're adding and demographics that they're adding to their coalition are holding. And it wasn't just sort of a fluke, maybe protest election 2024. It's that these demographics actually are becoming taking a more positive view of the Republican platform and Republican candidates. So it'll be an interesting one to watch. And so while Alabama, at certainly the presidential level, is not going anywhere, and the majority of its districts, 6 out of the 7, are not going to go anywhere, I think District 2 could actually serve as a really interesting, give us sort of an interesting insight into whether those improvements that Trump made with certain minority groups in different races is actually holding strong. And so we'll see what that looks like in 2026. But anyway, that's Alabama. Alabama is the state we kind of know it to be. It's going to be deep red, but there are some interesting things to take into consideration there, mainly that second district, how that holds, how that moves. So guys, thanks for joining me in this video. We're going to be looking at every single state. So certainly keep an eye out for those videos when they come out, but thank you for joining us on this video, and I'll see you in the next one.